flash with you and just keep going.
Okay, no problem. So, community engagement and relationships. We have already established partnerships for next year with, we have an MOU with Learning Well Clinics. The schools, the 2 high schools do have clinics in them, and we have signed an MOU to be able to keep those community clinics in the schools. We have signed an agreement with Teach for America, TFA. We actually have already hired 21 new educators from TFA. We are very excited about that. That was done a few weeks ago. I will tell you the way, just so that you understand the way we look at our schools, is we typically have a third new teachers, a third with 3 to 5 years experience, and a third that are veteran experienced top talent teachers. We have worked with the Urban League, and we will be continuing with the Project Ready program that is currently at Howe. Like I mentioned earlier, Byron Ernst will be working with us to create our agricultural sciences academies at all 3 schools. They will have an introductory course in the middle school and then move into the high school components for the academies. Bruce Bai and Jeff Harper actually resigned from their Star Academy committee in order to work with us in forming a new agricultural sciences program for those schools. We are continuing to work in building additional community partners. As John mentioned earlier, we have started holding monthly meetings with our community partners so that we can continue to, 1, find those partnerships. I will be honest with you, going into these schools and asking people, give me a list of the current program offerings in your schools where you have partnerships and community involvement. We have not been able to get a comprehensive list of those programs. So about the time that we think we have the comprehensive list, one of the community partners comes up and says, hey, you didn't invite me to the meeting. Why didn't you invite me to the meeting? Well, we didn't know that you wanted to be part of this. So we are working really hard with Jackie and the resources from IDOE to really begin to look at, continue to build those community partners. So like I said, we have a list, but people continue to come out and say, hey, I want to be part. I run a program at the school. I want to continue to do that. So we're open to that. Our next steps for community engagement, we will be creating a SAC committee at each of the schools. Those will be in place by July. The reason for that is if we move now on putting together the SAC committee, we are limiting the people the stakeholders that we can include in the process. So we really want to build our stakeholder groups, build our parent groups, build our student groups, build those community partnerships, business relationships, so that they can come out and say, I want to be on the SAC committee and go through the process. And we are continuing to formalize those community partnerships.
With that, thought it might be appropriate to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we have learned and then finish up with how we plan to overcome them. The pluses and minuses of the one-year transition. This is the first time that Indiana has engaged in this process of turnaround, and it's a process that legislatively was born. And I think there are some pluses to the one-year transition where we're not actually in charge of the schools. We do have the time to assess. We do have the ability to get in the classrooms. We do have the ability to provide a working plan based on what we've seen. There's some real negatives to it as well, to be forthright on that. And that is you have more time for a district to potentially put up hurdles, create difficult situations, and in many ways sort of elongate the pain, so to speak, for parents and for the disruption. So I only offer that up as a board as you think about policy in the future and refining legislation. I think right now as an operator we would say it might be better to pull the Band-Aid off quicker than to sort of slow pull it and make it a much quicker process of maybe 2 to 3 months. With high quality operators in place to maybe take on those opportunities, but that's just for what it's worth. With that fact that we've had a year transition, we look at it as the home team advantage has been pretty significant. No student or parent information except for the default students, and I don't want to correct Jim because Jim's been amazing, but We really didn't have input on that term. That term was their term. Those dates were their dates. And we think it's a little bit put downish at best to talk about these schools as the default schools. Those students, what do you think they want to say when they say, I'm going to default to the school? It just doesn't sound right. And yet we've had a limited opportunity to sign up students. So we did agree with the district to go to the same open enrollment night that they had. They had other schools there that they were recruiting for. That was the one chance we did have to do that. It was an off-site opportunity. We've had no chance to do that at the schools, of course with no lists as well. We've had limited access to the schools. We're just now starting to get some access where we have a small room where we can actually work out of and actually have people on site. You can imagine it doesn't work well to work downtown and then try to get into the schools and have a face that people put on it. At the end of the day, parents are going to make decisions based on the confidence and trust of the faces that they believe in, the teachers, the principal, and the people that are operating their school. So it's very important we have better access. We can't speak to students. Now, I understand that it does absolutely make sense. We would not want to intrude in instructional time. Of course not. That was never proffered on our part. Of course we would not ask to do that. But there are breaks. There are lunch times. There are places that we can do things in the school to give students information on their off time, before school, after school. So having that opportunity expanded would really help get information out to these parents and students who seem to not have enough information, as per the article you saw today in the Indy Star. There's just pure and simple a culture of fear. We don't know how else to say it. We went back and forth and said, should we just say it in public? And the answer is yes, we're going to just say it. And the answer is there's just a culture of fear. There's a lot of teachers that have actually come to us quietly and said, don't let anybody know we're applying to your organization to work here or we'll lose our job. There's a lot of fear around the fact that there's layoffs, and that's been used as sort of a way to create even more. And then there's this situation where in the schools, the teachers even told us that we've told not to talk to you. And it's just not. Well, it's hard to say. I would assume at some level above them. There's no evidence for me to come out today and say that Dr. White has said this. I'm not going to do that. We have not heard that. In the meetings with Dr. White, when we've brought up certain things, the answer is that I haven't told anybody not to talk to anyone, right? But the fact of the matter is in the schools, this is what is told to us by the teachers. And that's evidenced by multiple people on our team and by teachers at the school who I'm sure would say the same. That culture of fear creates a whole sense of what is coming. What is this about? Where are we going? And if you don't have access to the parents to tell them, and there's a fear factor, that can work to undermine enrollment. So we were told last week, I believe it was, or 2 weeks ago, that they have made the number that there's about 3,000 students in these schools. Folks who work in the schools themselves, that number comes out around 2,500. So there's a discrepancy already between what is the enrollment that's been told us versus the enrollment that we've been able to identify. And then now we've been told that only 1,800 of those students will be defaulting into the school. The others have made decisions to move to another IPS school. And then misinformation to students and parents regarding the turnaround operator and what will be offered next year in the schools. At no point have we not provided the information necessary for parents to make the decisions that they need to stay at this school or transfer to this school. We have been very clear. We've come out as many places as we can to talk about this. Again, it's just hard to get the message out if you don't have access to the parents. No football schedule is a good example. Just in the last 2 days, we worked with the athletic director at Howe, and he sent out notices, and I guess all the other schools that they were going to play next year canceled because they said they didn't know if we're going to have a football team. Therefore, there's no schedule next year for the football team. Now, we can say we're going to have a football team, and if you don't have anyone to play, what good is it? So obviously we're in the corrective mode right now of that. We're going to fix that. We're going to make sure these teams have people to play next year. We're not going to take the sitting down. One thing you're going to know about us is that you hired fighters, and we're just not going to give up. But at the same time, I want you to have facts and understand what we're dealing with. With that, the hard fact is, and this is just the hard fact, the schools were...
I just want to get this on the
Yes,
record.
sir.
I'm sorry. I want to get this, make sure I understand this and get this on the record. So you have been clear from the beginning, as you said, that you were going to have football. But the athletic director from Howe, on his own initiative, or do you know, or whatever reason...
Cancel his contracts. He had contracts with their schools.
Yeah, as a coach, I know that most of our contracts are 2 to 5 years, so they would have a contract
No, the school doesn't play one
So,
year.
right, so whether initiated on his own or whether told to do so, he contacted other schools and said, Howe will not be playing you next year?
Don't know for sure, so why would you commit?
Is that correct?
I think what they would say is that they were unsure of, because there were some emails yesterday going back and forth. I think what they would say.
Why didn't they check with you?
I don't know, because we have an athletic
You're
director
unsure.
hired at Howe, who is currently at Howe. So if there was any question, then you can walk up the hall and ask. That was never done. I think what would be said to you is that the schools holding the contracts called the school and we didn't know what to tell them, so they then are unsure of how the school's moving forward next year. They want to make sure they have a full schedule, so the decision was made to not play. So our current athletic director is in touch with the Indiana Athletic Association today, and we are getting that fixed. However, that's concerning to students who are at the school, who they love football, so therefore they make different choices. And I think Kelly is a parent at Howe. She's here. She hears some of what has been said to the students about programs. Think about it from a student perspective. This is my junior year, and they're telling me there's no football next year. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And to take back your point, if everybody would stay focused on doing what's right for these kids in these schools, we wouldn't be having this tug of war of what's right. What's right is to ensure that the students and the parents are making good choices for their education next year, and we would all move forward together. We as the adults must stay focused on providing these students a quality education next year with extracurricular, with co-curricular activities, so that we can begin to see these students making academic achievement and performance. That's what we all should be focused on, not putting up barriers to ultimately, in my mind, penalize the students. Let's get back to what's good for the kids.
Were most of the scheduled schools other IPS schools?
I believe they were.
Yes, they were. So there's the hard fact. The schools were failing before the turnaround process began, or you wouldn't have been turning them around. And unfortunately, we believe that they're set up for further failure at this point than they were even coming into the job, because of the process that's been in place that we've been through. It's not all been bad. There's been some good meetings, been some promises, and some kept. I'm not here to create a firestorm. I'm just here to tell you the truth. And we're going to accept, we're ready to provide whatever data is necessary and whatever evidence to back that up. Opportunity for success. In spite of the political game that's been played and putting the interest of the system over students, we will succeed. It's a culture of excellence that we're going to build. We're going to build it one teacher at a time. We've literally interviewed hundreds of people, and we've chosen 40 so far. The complaint has been, we're not hiring enough fast enough. Well, we're picky, really picky. And the fact of the matter is there's a lot of good people, but we're not going to just accept the first people who walk in the door. And we're doing a national search.
Excuse me, John.
Yes, sir.
There's a myth to this thing that no one will want to teach in these schools.
Yeah, well, that's at first, we were actually a little concerned ourselves, Dr. Bennett. We came in, remember this, and I was talking to you. At first, we kind of were, this culture of fear created sort of, nobody wanted to step up and say they want to be a part of this. And what's happened over the last 3 months is that started to turn. Folks that have courage, like at TFA, have stepped up. Folks in the existing schools that put kids first, not politics, teachers are starting to step up. It's actually inspiring. There's a good story here. It's going to take time, and the story is that, people, in spite of a broken process and a broken system, are stepping up more and more, Dr. Bennett. They want to be a part of this. They're excited about what's happening in the state. We're getting calls from across the country. There are now people coming in from other states. The first lady we just hired was out of Detroit. She runs a Yes Prep school. They're one of the tops in the state. When you start getting people that are running great schools in other places that want to come and be a part of the turnaround process, that's the good news story. So we think we're going to get great people. We're going to have to pay them a little more, and we like that. So we're going to pay them more, we're going to give them better bonuses, we're going to give them better support, we're going to create with them a culture of excellence that this team has built in the 2,500 employees we have today. They're going to join that team, and they're going to be excited about it. We're going to. So I think the answer is yes, we are seeing that happening now. It's taken some time for people to start to have the courage to step up.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. There's among us, you're just going to know about our team, we just don't compromise when it comes to academic rigor. That means it's going to be a little harder. It's going to be painful the first year. It just is, and there's going to be a lot of noise. And we're hoping that we'll have the support to see that through, and to make sure that you'll see that the results will come. We've done it before, and we can do it again. Parent as customer model will build involvement. Parents right now are more disengaged in these schools than any schools we've ever seen. Not all of them. There's some parents that are absolutely highly involved, but many parents who literally have just given up on the system and they don't feel included. There's not a place or a voice for them to participate. And these parents need to be re-engaged one-on-one. It is going to literally be it's a ground game. It is a one-on-one campaign of convincing each parent to trust in what's happening, trust in where we're going, commit to being involved, giving them a way to be involved, and then involving them in a productive way in these schools. We've done that in some of the highest performing charter schools in the country. We think we can do that in these schools, but I will tell you, parent involvement is probably our largest challenge outside of the culture of the school. Educational options within the school. Fact is that right now in IPS you have to go to a different school for a different program because they're all magnets now apparently. And in this program, what we're doing is we're saying, without putting labels on things, we're producing in the schools tracks for students who want to come out and go right into the workforce as well as college. And those tracks will be built within the schools. You don't have to go outside the school anywhere special to get the specialties. They'll be within the school because we're building the academic model so that you can do that, including dual enrollment. Performance-driven educators. At the end of the day, you can't make this happen without the best educators. And we're going to find the best educators in the country. We're going to have to pay them more. We're going to have to give them the support that they haven't had. But at the end of the day, we're starting to see that turnaround of great people coming to the table. And by the way, IDOE has been extremely helpful in this process. I just want to mention that again. Commitment to character development. I hate to say it, but there's a lot of kids here who don't know right from wrong. They're not in a place where they're actually being taught some core basic civility, character development, respect for others, and those kind of things are going to have to be inculcated in the school culture at every level, in the classroom instruction, in the way that people model themselves. And everything we do is going to be a character development model. That's why I fought so hard for ROTC. As a former military veteran, I felt it was absolutely credible or important to have the junior ROTC program back at these schools because we want to show that it's a good thing to serve our country. It's a good thing to be a part of a unit, to be a part of something that serves others. And so that's part of the character development program. We have applied and been awarded through a local board here in Indiana 2 K-6 charter schools. We specifically, during the process of selection, made it known that our model is not just to take kids after they're 2 or 3 years below grade level and try to catch them up in 2 or 3 years. That's a situation that is not successful long term. The model is to put in place a K-12 feeder system so that all students coming in, the fact of the matter is these students were low performing before they got there. And we need to deal with that. So you will be hearing announcements in the very near future about locating 2 K-6 charter schools in these markets with these 2 middle and high schools so we can actually help feed them in a model that actually will be a K-12 model. It'll take some time over years because they'll start small with lower grades, but over time what this will do is it will begin to build students that are at and above grade level coming into the middle schools, going into the high schools. And last, these buildings are beautiful. They've spent a lot of money on them. Madonna's needs some retrofits, but the 2 high schools are in beautiful schools, physical plants. But the fact of the matter is that they're a shadow of their old self, and we want to reignite the pride of these historic community schools. There is an opportunity here to do something very, very big. Not just in Indianapolis and not even just in your state of Indiana, but across the country and be an example of how these schools can be the beacons of hope and opportunity for these students again. We appreciate you giving us the opportunity to do this. We won't let you down. We hope that none of our comments were meant to in any way, shape, or form make excuses for anything that we're going to be challenged with. They are not, but they are the facts that we're dealing with, and we appreciate your support. So thank you.
I really appreciate the clarity of your vision for these schools. If I was a parent, I would feel from your presentation and what I've seen here, I have all the factors I need to decide whether or not I want my kid to go here right now. And I think that's very important. So forgive me if I missed something, but do you already have a contract?
So the process that we're working through with the department is I think they're going to give us a form in this week.
So right now you don't have a signed contract?
Well, I have an assessment, the 1 year agreement, but we are not yet in a contract to operate the schools. That's correct.
Well, then I even commend you further because you all obviously have put a lot of money and resources at risk already without having a contract. I think I heard you say you hired 21 teachers already?
40.
40. See, I mean, that is, I think, a model for what needs to be happening in all the turnaround schools. You can't really wait. I mean, the longer you wait, the further behind you get.
Well, maybe we're taking risks that we shouldn't, but I think what we believe is that, first of all, I have a lot of confidence in Dr. Bennett and what he's doing here in Indiana. It's really been a model for the country. Other people around the country are modeling what you guys are doing here in Indiana. So we feel like this is, for us, an opportunity to really come in and do some heavy lifting and contribute in a way we wouldn't typically do in just starting up a new charter school even. I've spent more time here than I have with the 30-plus charter schools that we operate around the country because this is, for us, the most important project we've ever undertaken as a company. And so I've told our team, as the owner of this organization and as the leader, that we're going to put everything on the line here. It's just that simple. And we think, all we ask in return, I think you asked this question earlier, is there are partners around the city that are well-intended and are capable, and everybody has a role here. I don't think Charter School USA alone can do this. In fact, I know we can. We're going to need those community partnerships. We're going to need the state board to give us some air cover. We'll be your ground troops on the ground, and we'll commit to making the hard choices and doing the hard things in the classroom to get these kids up to where they can be. But we just appreciate the folks who've stepped up to the plate already and would encourage those who haven't yet to say, this is happening. The genie's out of the bottle. It's not stopping. And so we see it as, even though we don't have a contract, that as far as we're concerned, we're building something for the next 20 years.
Your risks benefit our kids.
If I could just add to that, our principal will be on the ground March 15th. Our assistant principal will be on the ground March 15th. Our parent liaisons are starting in the next couple of weeks. It is extremely important that the leaders of these schools be in place and walk through this turnaround process so that they know exactly what the challenges will be, what the data says, so as we move into the goal setting processes for these schools next year, that they are here on the ground, know the programs, and have walked down that road. So that's the importance of that risk to get them in place now. You're right, we cannot wait.
Tony, if I may, I'd like to respond a little bit to what you said because I think it's very important that we say this. I think all three of these turnaround school operators clearly understand the commitment the department has and this office and this board have to success. Earlier in my opening comments, I talked about maybe one of the toughest things I've done in 3 years, having to go down and see that community. I would also tell you there is nothing more important we've done in 3 years than address this issue. It was the most important decision this board made. It's been, in my opinion, among the most important activities this department has undertaken, and I think everyone involved, our department, Jim, Matt, our office, and our turnaround school operators, understand the gravity of this situation. And I think part of that is everyone here is operating in good faith that we are going to provide a framework for success and that our turnaround school operators are going to deliver within that framework. So one thing I want all three of our turnaround operators to hear without any equivocation, there should be no misinformation or miscommunication. We are 100% committed to do everything possible to make this a successful initiative. And that's why we are asking for very specific information, very specific ways that the department and my office can help you be successful. And it's not helping Charter Schools USA be successful. It's not helping Edison. It's not helping Ed Power. It's helping the faces of the children, the hearts of the children that are in these schools. That's what we're after, and that's all we're going to stand for. So I just want to say part of this is, I think all three of our turnaround school operators, if you don't understand our commitment to this, you obviously haven't been listening, because we are incredibly committed to the success of the children in these schools. Yep.
I might be stating the obvious, and you already know this, but and this will be something we'll think about long term, but right now, these are residents of the state, we have a responsibility to educate them. The data about these students are in the schools of the state of Indiana. Our agent right now is IPS to educate them. Can we take control of that information and get it to all the providers that are going to educate children immediately?
I'm going to turn to Matt, and I think that's the legal question.
I don't want to weigh in, and I want the parents to go and make their choice, but right now, can't we just take that and say, here, providers, communicate with these children and their parents, and let's let them see where they want to be?
Matt, I'm going to.
So, within the confines of Purple, we've kind of suggested some creative ideas in terms of how we can get, for example, direct mailing out. One of the options we had contemplated was IPS providing the information to the department putting together a mailing in terms of housing that information, putting together the mailing labels, and then sending that mailing out on behalf of CSUSA or whoever the operator would be. I mean, that's kind of the current thinking in terms of how we can.
How fast can you make that decision determination? How fast can we make this determination and then decision and execute?
In terms of this plan?
Yes.
I would probably say this week.
I'd
say this week or next. I mean, this is something that we.
I mean, long term, we can think a whole new strategy. It just seems like these are young people we have a responsibility to educate. We made a decision that the present option wasn't working, so we brought in folks that think they can do it better, and we have faith that they can. And we just want to make sure parents know about this. Right now, the situation they're not getting all the information. It appears to me it's pretty clear. Means it's our ultimate responsibility. That's all we're doing. We're just making sure that the parents have all the options. And it's our decision to do it, so it's our decision to communicate, I believe. I'd like to know if it isn't, why not?
Okay.
So, and just to be clear, I mean, one of the things that we're dealing with now is these are students that intend to enroll or seek to enroll in these schools. As a result, I mean, it's going to be permissive in terms of IPS providing this information to the turnaround school operator until these students are enrolled. At that point, under statute, these, IPS would be required upon written request to provide the educational records to the TSO.
Right now, they are enrolled in those schools.
TSOs aren't in control of the school yet.
No, but they're enrolled in schools that are responsibility of the state, and we're asking for the information. And we want to share it with. You see my logic. It may not prevail.
Tony, did I understand you correctly that Matt is going to provide some kind of memorandum of options that we have if the situation doesn't improve
Yes.
markedly?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm assuming the situation won't change unless we change it, because the lines have already been drawn, it appears to me. I feel like we made a decision, but we didn't have control of one important aspect of it, that the parents hadn't knew about the option.
Well, I kind of wish, I don't think, this is not meant to be a criticism, it really isn't. I kind of wish, though, that we had been able to have this discussion a month or even two ago, because I hadn't been quite as cognizant of the fact that this window was open and then kind of closed in a sense. And I don't mean it's totally closed, because obviously kids or parents can change their decisions, based on new information, but I hadn't been aware of the fact that you were working toward this kind of deadline, even though the deadline's been moved. I just still think, I think what's happened is regrettable, and I think that Dan really did said it best. We've not allowed these parents to have all the information they need to make appropriate choices about the options for their children next year, and I think we need to really try to do everything we can to enable them to get that information over the course of the next few months, while there's still time for them to rethink their choice.
This discussion brings up the larger question that I've had and had some conversations with Jim and Todd about, in terms of what is going to be the role of this body in terms of governance, and what does that look like contractually. How do we see ourselves fitting in on the ongoing basis for the next 3 or 4 years and working with the operators? Do they have to come to us for curriculum decisions, or are they just totally free to operate sort of as the school and the governing body of the school? I think for purposes of moving the contract talks along, we should have at least some type of discussion in terms of what our expectations are around governance.
I think given the work that they have cut out for them, they would need an enormous amount of freedom, to kind of chart their own course.
I will say, the other thing I think it's very important to say is to obviously thank all of the operators for coming today, for taking the time to make thoughtful and pretty deep presentations about both their findings and their plans. I certainly was impressed by all of the presentations, by the commitment, by the efforts that have gone on to both assess the situation and prepare plans based on that, their assessments. So thank you very much for that. And I'm certainly, if anything, more confident than before that these organizations have the capacity to bring needed and significant change to the schools that they will be working in. I think it's our job to help them in any ways we can to achieve that, but I don't see anything in the reports or the updates at all to make me at all concerned that we made the right decisions.
Jim, Matt, one thing, we have PowerPoints from the first two. Can we be certain we get the board Charter Schools USA's presentation as well? Thank you very much.
Next discussion item on the report card for ADEP accountability, and I don't know, we do have a...
I think John Gabera is here.
Okay.
And I think the focus of this discussion, if I remember last month when we passed the accountability measurements for all schools in our state, we asked those here, we actually put together a group to discuss what that front page of that report card would look like. So there's a fairly understandable, simple, yet comprehensive way of receiving data, getting data, so that people can see how the school grade is calculated and what it looks like. So, John, you're here today with your team to actually bring some views to the board. Is that correct? Thank you.
Yeah. We're going to send out the old version and the new version in case you don't have it. And it's in color, so you can see it how it'll appear in color. You may have black and white, so.
Are they the same?
That would be fine. One's on next to one.
Okay, so this is the old version. Please. The stapled version is the old elementary elementary and the old high school.
So school XY is old and Colts.
Yes, Colts and Pacers.
Colts and
are the new.
Colts and Pacers are new.
New Pacers.
Yeah. The new one is a single page and it's front to back, and then the old one is the extended version of both old copies, the elementary and middle school model and the high school model. And the new version is the one that we have up on the PowerPoint here too. Yeah, I made extras.
Let me also, if I may, John, my understanding is that all schools in the state, Steve, you're here, you can verify this, we sent out a spreadsheet electronically that enables all the schools in the state to compute their letter grades. Now, let me say this, there is probably a bit of there will be a little bit of effort on the school's part, especially a high school's part, to obtain some of their college and career readiness indicators. The fact is, once you have those indicators in your hand, it is a very quick calculation. Steve, is that fair?
True, I ran my own and it was very quick and easy.
So that is out, and frankly, some of the conversations around the state with various entities around the misinformation providing what the grades are, hopefully will be ironed out as people decide to calculate their own grades. Because in what some people may have thought they were a B, and that was the preliminary work we gave, because you had access to factual data, you were actually able to see that your grade, in most instances, I would say most people are seeing those grades actually went up a bit. And the reason is, at the elementary and middle school, there is a 162-day of enrollment calculation as opposed to the 126-day of attendance calculation. And at the high school piece, the fact that our local schools have their actual college and career readiness indicator data provides them a much better picture, as well as their dual credit data, on how their grade would be calculated. So there's been a lot of misinformation, kind of piggybacked on what we heard from our TS, turnaround school operators. Frankly, there's been a lot of misinformation purposefully put out about this model. And the fact is, I think people now see that the model is pretty easy to work, it's pretty easy to calculate, and I think they are seeing that it is not this this terrible draconian thing that we've tried to do. So I'll stop the editorializing and hand it to you, John.
Just as a quick preview, this is the workbook that Dr. Bennett spoke of. It's on, we sent it out through Sam's and Pam's. It's also posted on our accountability website, on the new website. You go to it here. There's 5 tabs on the bottom. The first is for elementary and middle school, then the high school tab. If you're combined school, there's a tab for you. There's definitions that explain all the terms in there, if you're confused about what data needs to go in there. And then on the very last tab is the points and grade scale. So Andrew clicked on the last tab here to show everyone what the point scales are. They want to know the point translation for the proficiency scores, which is the same on all of them except for college and career readiness, as you know, because the max there, or the high point, is 25%. If he goes to the definitions page, tab 4, we list every single concept in the workbook. They can go to the definitions page so they have a clear understanding of who needs to go in that calculation. For example, for the proficiency, it even says specifically students enrolled 162 days or more. It also has the LEP exemption in here too. So it's all the data's there, all the methodology is there. Schools can look at their own data and plug it in. They can go historical, they can use it to do projections, everything. One quick note, if we go back to elementary and middle school model. So literally, you just put the data in there, it computes it for you, and also we show the growth targets that you need to hit to get the bonus. So you have an idea how close you are to that bonus target. So we'll just, if you don't mind, do a really quick example.
Sure.
Just put in some data.
That's no problem.
Okay. So if Andrew, he's going to put in combined I-STEP, let's say 88%. So 88% of your kids pass I-STEP, IMAS, and I-STAR. So it computes right there, lets you know that gives you 3.50 on the grade scale. Okay, Andrew, change that to 82%. So at 82%, we know that we have those half-point increments, so you'd go down to 3.0 on the scale. Then in the next field, you'd put in the percent of your bottom 25% subgroup that demonstrated high growth. The target you see is 42.5% to get the high growth. So say they had 41% of their bottom 25% demonstrated high growth. Hits enter, it stays at 0. There's no bonus. Go back to that cell and put 43. Adds a bonus there. Top 75, let's say they fell below the target at 35%. Or 34, good enough. And then we looked at all students to see if they had too many of their students showing low growth. Let's say in this case they did, they had over 39.8%, which is the target. So put in 40%. So then do the automatic calculation there for you. So you can see your English total is 3.0, but then we also, as you know, for elementary middle school, look at participation. You have to have 95% of kids participate in both those groups. Let's say they hit the participation mark on each at 95%. So it defaults to the negative, but once you put in that you've hit it, it takes it out. Calculate your total score. So for English, you'd have 3.0. Slide down to math. Put in 76. Gives them 2.50. Let's say they hit the target in math, 45% for low growth, or for high growth for the bottom 25%. Did not here, so put 38. And all students, they stayed under the cap, so say 36%. So here they had 2.5 as their base, and then with growth in that one subgroup, they got a bonus point, so that put them up to 3.5. And then participation, let's say their final participation, 95 each. Then it combines your English and math grade for you and gives you your overall GPA of 3.25 and a B. And so click on the high school tab.
So let me, what the school has to have, John, just for clarity, again, I'm just going to ask some clarity questions here. What the school has to do before doing this is count their 162 day of enrollment children.
Yep.
Okay. That's
they have all this data available to them.
I understand that, but that is a different count than what they have been accustomed to.
Correct.
So is that why then that some schools would see a drop in their scores, the differences in that?
They would actually,
enrollment
between
dates?
162 and
It would go
126,
up.
you will actually see an increase in grades because it's based on a 162 day of enrollment. Now, here's where you might see it. You will see, and correct me if I'm wrong here, John, you could see a differentiation because if this is a large district, say EVSC, say Evansville, and there is transients within the district, the 162 day of enrollment within the district counts against the district, but may not show up on a school because this is school specific, but it rolls up to the district and 162 day of enrollment sticks with the district if a child is enrolled 162 days in the district.
That's a great point, Dr. Ben. So you would do this for your school, but you also use the same workbook to do your corp grade. And you'd want to do that to see the difference in, if kids are moving around in your district, they're still going to be in your corp grade, but they might get removed from a school grade. And you do the corp grade here. So then let's think about a corp grade and even a combined school. So you have the high school model, so you leave that data in there, high school model. We're not going to fill it in now just for time's sake, but same thing with the high school model. You put in all your data for ECAs, English and math, you put in your grad rate, you put in your college and career readiness. Then for a combined school, this would be for any combined school or the corporation. So a combined school corporation, they would fill out all their data for the elementary and middle school, because we calculate that as a separate model, and then you'd fill out all your high school information for all your high school kids. And then on this third page, what you end up doing is, as we said before in the rule, we then multiply those elementary, middle school, and high school grades by the percent that they serve in your entire enrollment for those grades. So then you put in that percentage right here, and it'll calculate that to give you your combined overall grade, including the enrollment percentages piece of that. Any questions? We've got a lot of positive feedback from the field on it so far. Okay. score. So we convened a working group February 21st of a wide variety of folks from the field, including high school principals. Steve Baker's here; he's on the committee. Also, the PTA president, elementary and middle school principals, represented from charters and also represented from non-publics, to give us feedback on our report card. And so you see represented here on the first one they have in front of you is our attempt to capture all the feedback that they gave us in terms of updating the report card. I just want to highlight a few notes on that and then open it up for discussion. We also are here to solicit feedback from the wisdom of the board. And so a couple key points I want to share with you from the working group, and if I leave anything out, I'd ask Steve to chime in because he was involved in the meeting. And Dan, also Scott is here, he can also chime in. But one of the big things that they'd mentioned is they're really interested in having the first page, really the big takeaway that anyone in the community would walk away with. Something they could use at PTA meetings, something they could use at their local board meeting. It's really the page they really want to say, this is the one thing that should have saliency to anyone when they leave the room. And then they said the details, they actually like the fact that the greater details are then either linked, as we've suggested here, that you click on the English language arts to learn more about it. We also discussed this idea of doing the rollover option you can now do on webs, where you can just roll over that term and then a box will open up to give greater detail to that. We might end up doing a mix of those two. Maybe the rollover box would be definitional, right? And then the click would be how the score was calculated. So I think we might end up in that middle ground, which I think would be pretty user-friendly. The other piece to add to this, so this report card, will end up residing on Compass, which is where our public site for anyone that wants to learn any information about schools and their performance. With that, I don't know, does Steve, did I leave anything else out? Love to hear your feedback on it. This is an iterative process. This is not the final mock-up, but this is a step closer.
What I liked about the old model opposed to the new model was I like the idea that you had the grades for language and you had the grades for math on this sheet, but I don't see that on the new sheet.
Yeah, I would say consensus or near consensus from the committee was they felt on the front page it might be too confusing to the average person if they have multiple grades on the front page. They also said even having the points on there might be too confusing. They figured if someone wants to go to that level of detail, they'd want that in a click option, if you will.
Tell me, where's the click option on this?
Oh, so what it is it's same concept as before. The reason why I gave the old model out is so we've just updated this front page, and so the old model represents the clicking, if you will. If you turn to page 2, it would take you to the diagnosis for English language arts. If you click on math, it would give you the full breakdown of that. And we haven't updated any mock-ups on that from the committee, but the committee responded in a way that they wanted that on the next, I guess, or the next click, if you will, to get to that. So if you would click on English language arts, it's not on the one I hand out, but it's on the old model. It would take you to the deep dive on English language arts and how that grade was calculated for English language arts.
Well, first of all, I think this is very, very attractive, very clear, and neatly laid out. I like a lot of it. I kind of see where Mike's coming from. I certainly agree with you about the scale. I think you could do without that. If there was some way to get the grade maybe in the bar or under the bar, I think that.
So at the top, you could have on the left, put Colts Elementary School in the middle. On the left-hand side, put English grade B, math grade B, and on the right, final grade B.
Yeah.
It all fit there. I agree with Mike. I'm sorry. No,
that's a better idea. Thank you.
You got to think about this from the point of view not of the insiders, but the outsiders. The parents won't. And they need to see the pathway, and the community leaders and all that need to see the pathway. And if you can get it in there, I'd put it in.
I think it's a good process. And to me, hearing you today gives me greater clarity. But I agree with David that you have to think of this from someone on the outside looking in, and they're going to be lost.
While we're piling on.
John, I like what you've done.
Yeah, no,
Well,
it's good progress.
There's a lot of, the committees was very helpful.
Yeah, much
My
better than
staff
before.
has been working through this iteration, so credit is well spread, so.
It's much better than before, but while we're piling on, I really regret not seeing the percent of students that pass both English and math. Again, if I'm a college, I don't admit, guys, rarely would I admit somebody who's just blazingly good in math and can't write. And I sure wouldn't employ somebody like that. So, you know, you need to at least think about it again.
Mm-hmm. Right. We had a lively debate about that one in the committee.
John, I thought the bar graphs were real helpful in understanding the student growth.
Yeah.
Are the Colts with or without Peyton?
This, if you look at their English performance, that would be without Peyton.
That's good progress.
On the flip side, just so the high school's on the other side, if you want to peek at that one too. These are our Pacers.
And they're doing better this year?
Yeah, they made the playoffs last year, and I think they're doing even better this year. They did well at the game I went to. They're fun to watch.
Any questions, further comments for John? So can we bring another, would you like to see another iteration the next month? Can we do that? Okay.
And I would say feel free to send comments to me.
John, I know that probably as a whole, as David said, pile on even more. I know we haven't, when can we, it'll be a little bit before we will actually be able to do the data runs of our schools, correct? Is it impossible for us to ask the schools to submit how they've calculated their own grades so that we can begin to get some indication of that?
I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, they have the tool now to do it in there.
Steve, do you think most principals would be amenable to saying, you know, here's the grade I calculated for us, understanding that there could be an error, but I mean, you know, because again, one of the things we keep kind of pushing back and forth is this belief that this was, again, some effort to cause schools to be unreasonably low. And I want to get an indication as quickly as we can of what true effect this has had. And I think people would be forthright in reporting this if we just had aggregated data. So, I mean,
I just hate to ask for one more thing.
Okay. Well, I mean, I
appreciate that.
They have the tool. They have the tool to do it. The other piece of that, Tony, is they're using, you know, their data. Sometimes they think a kid's not in their cohort when actually they are in their cohort as they report to us. So that's why we always caution this is an approximation. It doesn't mean whatever you produce out of this will be your actual grade. But I think from the schools that responded to me already, they really appreciate this tool because they're like, well, wait, we can now, because we look at our data closely. Those that really look at our data closely will take this and run with this and look at how they would have done in 2007 under the new model, and even maybe start projecting.
And I appreciate that, and I understand that. Again, I'm strictly looking at the impact, the perceived impact, the accused impact that we've had on schools when we should, again, be thinking about the impact this all has on children, but to play into that discussion.
I like Dan's word. How about encourage schools to do that? I have on a note myself, because I received this last week and I wasn't as eager as Steve was to go do this. but at the same time, I'm going to go back and I'm going to say to my principals and say, would you please do me a favor, go in and calculate your grades, and then let's bring them together and talk about them. Then I guess if we have a concern, we'll get a hold of you guys. But
could we do that? Could you set up? Could we? You know, we need to let them know it's from me. Encourage them to calculate their grades and report those back, so we could begin compiling some secondary preliminary data, if you will.
Well, it would help
after the first round.
dismiss a lot of the false assumptions
Exactly.
that are running rampantly out there with no data to back up their assumptions.
Steve?
Just a question, are you talking about what the data would be for this school year that we're in currently, or from last school year? What data
Last
are you
year.
referring to?
We would have to use last year because we don't have all this year's data.
10-11.
That's what I-
10-11, yep.
Yep.
And that's what
I'll
I
put
was going
that.
to say is that's, I can only speak high school, that's pretty available data. My English score, my math score, my graduation rate. The only place I could guess is college and career, but I can't speak for our schools. We have a pretty good handle. I have 120 seniors, so it's pretty easy to keep track of that, keep a tally. I can't speak to those that have thousands, but, you know.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this? Thank you very much, John. Good work. And we'll see the next one next month.
Thank you.
John, you'll see I emailed you that PowerPoint I referenced earlier from the superintendent up in Northwest Indiana, talking about the quotas and all that, just so you can see it, what's going on.
$20.
Thank you.
Oh, well, hell. Go ahead.
You caught me off guard with that.
What do you think? What do you think, Superintendent?
Stop the case.
Go ahead.
Two consent agenda items. Approval of our request for reserves from the Common School Fund, reserving funds for charter school advancement loans, school technology advancement account, and construction and technology loans. The second item on the consent agenda is the Peru Community Schools governing body plan with regard to their elections coming into compliance with the law.
I'm reading the comments. Basically what we're asking to do is make that available, is to access those dollars.
To reserve those funds to make them available.
And then I'm seeing that the applications will be accepted through from March 9th through the April 6th. And so you'll get those applications out as quick as, are those applications available right now?
That I don't know, Mike. I'd have to ask Melissa. I can find out.
Okay, because I guess, saying that, March 9th, I would think that we would want those then to be on the superintendent's mailing
Okay.
come Friday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, come Friday, so.
Hard to apply for what you don't know about.
True. I'll make
Okay.
sure it's in the
And
superintendent's
they
mailing.
have to be through, they have to be back April 6th. I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Great. Last item is an action item. There's been some discussion within the department about how effective our summer school reimbursement, how we distribute summer school funds. They would like the opportunity to bring to you a proposed rule at the next, either in April or May, about a new way of distributing the summer school funds.
Okay, I'll go ahead, Dave.
Just, could you have them bring the logic and not just the rule?
Sure.
Sure.
And what I wrote back to Becky when I saw this one on the agenda and said, I don't understand, and I guess I would like to see the logic before we start the rulemaking process.
The basic logic.
If they both come together, we've at least got a shot of it. I'm with Mike, I don't want to get the rule and not understand it.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, I don't want to be here I don't want to be here the next month, and we're starting to think I'm on a rulemaking process, and I'm thinking, why are we even doing this? And so I'm just.
I can only tell you at a very general level, they're looking to make it more flexible for schools, to have some more flexibility with that.
I sat in here and I listened before, and there was and I'm not sure, and I know just from when we had this discussion on summer school the last time, there were I was talking about, and I get all my, everybody gets an amount based on their ADM. I don't know if I like that.
Okay.
And I don't even want that. I don't even know if I want that to be. See, I would have rather had that discussion before we even start talking about the rulemaking process, because number one, larger schools are going to get a lot of money, and all of a sudden now they're going to feel obligated to spend that money, rather than saying, I'd like to build a positive summer school program under these things, and immediately the smaller schools are going to be at a disadvantage because they're going to have less dollars, where I think there are some smaller schools out there that are running really nice and progressive summer school programs. But all of a sudden, we're going to be limited.
One of your options would be not to approve for them to start drafting a proposed rule, but to bring back a more sort of the outline of what they want in the proposed rule at the next meeting.
Is this for this summer?
No.
It's for 13?
Yes.
For 12, 13, for summer of 13.
Now, if there's no time sensitivity, why don't we have a discussion about
Okay.
general purposes and objectives?
Assumptions.
And assumptions and evidence and all that, and then...
Yeah, then I'm ready to listen.
Then we can...
Okay, could we have a motion to not approve?
Or can we just not take action?
Just
leave it?
tell them we'll defer this.
Okay,
In April or May, depending on what
I'd
else
like
is
it
on
to
the
be in
agenda.
May. I'm not going to be here in April.
okay.
What is that?
So
Michael,
you
what's
want
full-
sort of the outline, the
full
logic, and
force.
explanation of what they're thinking before they even begin to write the rule?
Sure.
Absolutely. Okay, no problem. Next meeting's April 4th. We will have the...
We'll do all the important stuff then, right, since he won't be here.
April 4th is
That's right.
the IPS boundary
Give
district,
unanimous votes.
board member boundary districts that will be before you. It should be much less complicated than we anticipated because at its February board meeting, the IPS governing body adopted the plan that DOE, the proposed plan that DOE had put together, DOE and the community partners had put together.
Glad to hear that, but could you make, to the same basic thought here, could you make sure there's a document in front of the plan that explains
You will still-
standard by which we're supposed to review it and all that?
You will still see both plans. They're identical at this point.
Even that, I
You-
personally don't know what's the standard we're applying. to
Okay,
either
certainly.
one of them.
Yep. Anything else for the next meeting that you need from me?
I think so.
Okay.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Yes.
They told me we're stacked.